Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Inherent Vice. A lot of directors, if they've done two big epic films, or they've done a lot of big films in scope and size, they will suddenly decide to do a smaller, more personal project before going back and doing another one. Most directors aren't like Paul Thomas Anderson, because Inherent Vice is a crazed California stoner comedy that has a bunch of different genres colliding into itself in a really glorious mess of a movie. I've complained before about films being too messy and the storytelling not really working for it. It's a different thing entirely when you see a director purposefully not really try to make a lot of sense and purposefully make a messy movie. And it's really a joy to see kind of this sketchbook, late 60s, early 70s inspired, all this takes place in 1970, so weird sunshine noir of a movie that Inherent Vice isn't afraid to throw at you. I almost look at it as Birdman was a crazy freeform of a movie, but that's more for the normal folks. That's a normal folks kind of crazy freeform movie. This is the crazy freeform for the film dorks, and it's the kind of crowd Paul Thomas Anderson usually makes his films for. And I think in this case, he really went for it to really do a change of pace for him as a director, but also make a really crazy, fun, almost like his cult movie entry to his filmography. Doc, a private investigator who has been awoken by his ex-girlfriend, Shasta, who knows there's mischievous dealings going on with her rich land developer boyfriend, who she's currently been living with, and she wants Doc to help her out and try to figure out what's happening to him as he goes on a early 70s California weed-smoked haze of an investigation to try to figure out exactly what's going on, as he picks up loose ends of other investigations through a very colorful cast of characters played by a very great group of actors. This is a very well cast movie, and getting into crazy adventure after crazy adventure while trying to figure out what exactly happened to Shasta's boyfriend Mickey Wolfman as Joaquin Phoenix goes through this bizarre drug trip film noir. Inherent Vice has visual jokes that are right out of the Abrams Zucker kind of films. It has Cheech and Chong humor, it has a really dumb joke with a frozen banana, but it also has really heartwarming parts. It has very deep parts. It has parts that are very silly. It really reminds me of things like Brewster McCloud, but I think Paul Thomas Anderson is having more fun and colliding more genres than those directors would really try to attempt to do. He just wants to play with all these different toys, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but if you just go with it. I had the honor of actually seeing The Big Lebowski the first weekend it opened. It was an interesting experience. After I left, I went, I don't know if I got it, but I had a good time watching it. And that's a lot of what's going on in Inherent Vice. It reminded me of that time. This is kind of Paul Thomas Anderson's The Big Lebowski, but more freeform than that. It's really so much of a cult film. He's made all these films that are really saying something about America and saying something about greed and saying all these different big issues and important issues, and they're really dense movies. But he almost made a dense, cult, bizarre, strange noir. It does feel freeform, it does feel like a sketchbook, but there's kind of a gloriness to Inherent Vice. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe I didn't really get it and I should just like see it again. There's plenty of 60s and 70s films that are like this where I've seen it once and I'm like, I'm good for a while or a couple of years. But Inherent Vice, it feels just like I felt when I saw The Master and There Will Be Blood. I'm like, I think I need to see that a bunch of times. I think there's a huge thesis hidden in this somewhere. And it shows how smart of a director he is, because he understands the visual poetry in comedy as well as drama as well as noir, and he wants to play in all of it and make this kind of crazy film. It feels like someone who watches a smorgasbord of media and lets it all collide together, but really understands the period as well. I actually got to see this on 35mm, which I didn't know when I bought the ticket, but it was cool that I did get to see it on that. And there were parts in the beginning that just felt like I was watching, the way it was lit felt like I was watching a 70s film, and it succeeds so well. American Hustle, I think, really plays it up. This, he is emulating it, but he's almost like being it. He's almost so ingrained in it. He's like copying the shots and mimicking it in such a way, but I almost feel like this is more 70s than a lot of directors could ever really accomplish. This feels like something that would play on TCM Underground. This feels like something that would be an obscure title that I would read about that was a big deal at the time, but no one talks about anymore. It has that joy to it. You can tell tell Paul Thomas Anderson is a film dork, is a cinephile from watching Inherent Vice. Some of the frames and some of the way he shoots it feels very loose. Like it was shot like it was a 70s film. It feels very improv. It doesn't feel like high production. But then other times it feels like certain shots are highly choreographed. It almost felt like there are certain segments that is like Paul Thomas Anderson's take on Wes Anderson. It was really interesting how he had so many styles in this film, but it didn't falter. It takes a really strong director to collide all these styles together. It's cool to tell people about all the styles and get really crazy and excited about it, where you want to go on and on about all the filmmaking that's going on in it. And I don't even know if I got all of it. I love how funny it was. I love how noir it was. I like how much of a stoner movie it is. This is probably the best stoner movie that's come out since The Big Lebowski. It does have similarities in that, you know, it's a stoner investigator, well, although Lebowski was an investigator, who gets kind of thrown into all this. It's really like an experience of the movie. You really just have to let go of going, oh, well, this has to be this, and it has to have supposedly 3 acts or 4 acts or whatever, and it has to start like this. If you're really into things making sense, then this is not the movie for you. This film is really joyous in its freeform nonsense bizarreness in a way that I haven't seen a film do from any director really do in this way. There's so much in here that I wonder. I was talking to some friends afterwards and we were like, well, is this person like Joanna Newsom's character? Is she make-believe? There's this bizarre narration going on. That's some of the best narration I've heard in a while. There's all this talk about is narration worth it or not, but I think it really colors the movie. This scene, if it wasn't in here, would feel like The Long Goodbye, but at the same time, I kind of like her voice going throughout it and describing like what Doc's going through. She's not a reliable narrator at all. She's helping your experience certainly, but she's not helping the plot move along necessarily. Was she real? You're never really sure. No one really talks to her. I'm not sure if she's real. It's kind of like one of those films where the more I think about it and talk about it, the more I'm kind of in love with it, because I'm like, how did all this happen? How did all these things come together and make such a wonderful, beautiful, amazing, crazy art movie that's this much fun? When you have a director who can get onto that vibe, man, you can really go and you can really watch him go with that. And he kind of leaves everything in the dust and you have to kind of piece it together. And I don't know if I could piece it together from a first viewing. The more I talk about this movie, the more I want to see it again. It has a really great performance by Joaquin Phoenix, who, like, the past 3 years with The Master and Her and this, 3 performances that every year I'm just amazed at how big of a comeback he's really made. He's pulled out some of the best performances of his career. Performances that are so smart and so interesting and so different from the one before the last one. Really, I think if someone told me he studied Bugs Bunny but also studied Philip Marlowe, he can switch through all those things. Supposedly, I was reading on the Wikipedia, Robert Downey Jr. was up for this role. He's too boring. He's too stale now. He can't do this kind of film. Joaquin Phoenix, the reason people love Joaquin Phoenix, talk about how he's such a great actor, is really on display in this film. But not in the way that we've seen it in Her and in The Master, in a more kind of glorious kind of comedic way. It's just amazing like what he can do physically. There's one scene where he's just walking by the bedroom and he does it in such a goofy way. The fun he has with it. The chemistry Josh Brolin and Joaquin Phoenix have. They're very funny together. They play off each other really well. He's just absolutely hilarious as this straight hippie hating cop Bigfoot. Has such a great square energy about himself. Josh Brolin can play square in such a delightful way. There's so many different actors who I even forgot how many people were in this before I knew, but you have people like Owen Wilson, who is very Owen Wilson, but was really good and fit the vibe of the film. You have Reese Witherspoon, Benicio del Toro, Jenna Malone, Maya Rudolph, Martin Short had a small role but was very funny. Of course, Eric Roberts, who I love Eric Roberts, Michael K. Williams, and even like the smaller character actors. It is such a well-cast film, and it's always fun to see more and more characters pop up in a more of a fun, like, Playhouse kind of way. I almost look at this as like Paul Thomas Anderson's 1941, you know, the Spielberg movie, in that it's fun to see a fun comedy directed by an A-list big top director. Comedies, they're usually not very visual, they're not that well directed. And it's fun to see a big director who normally would do these big dramas like Paul Thomas Anderson have fun with comedic actors and do more with comedy. And sure, a lot of the films I think of when I think of this film you would really consider to be like disasters, but they're always fun to watch. They're always fun to experience. And I think that's the thing with Inherent Vice. There are so many reasons you can hate this movie and misinterpret it and not get it, but it's fun to see an artist at play with so many different styles. The noir parts are very much there. He really gets how noir works. He understands how to get it and work within this California setting. But you can also see how he's getting the visual jokes to work. How he's playing with so much different imagery in this film. I've never seen him play with so much imagery before. How you can see the Altman, and you can see the Zaz comedy, and you can see, you know, Robert Crumb's and animation and comedy, and just, you know, what film was like back then. Cheaper noir and B movies, and he lets it all play in this like kind of madhouse of a noir movie. It's really like a stoner madhouse, and sure, he's getting the whole idea of the sexual revolution and people getting high and how that was a little out of control also, but he's also like having fun with it. It's interesting to see all these things at play, and part of me is not even sure if I could say it's good or not. It was too long. Maybe that was like kind of the point. I don't know. It was just so much going on, but it was done in such a gloriously directed way that you can't really, I think, as someone who loves movies and has been a fan of Paul Thomas Anderson, sure, this might not be my favorite film by him, but I've never seen someone make a lesser work in such an intensely crazed, madhouse, fun way, with all these styles careening together in a big car crash of different genres to make this one-of-a-kind experience of a movie. Inherent Vice is an undertone experience and a befuddlement to really understand. So if you have seen Inherent Vice and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.